Hello, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Al-Azouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we will help you to register your medical devices in Mexico. So I have with me Josué Garza, Director of Business Development and Operation at IPS, and he will help us to make this or to register your products in Mexico. So Josué, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Oh, Munir, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and help your audience get familiarized with the registration process in Mexico.
Yeah, great. So we are focusing a lot on this podcast also on the registration in Europe, but I'm trying to pick some countries one after the other and say, okay, let's go now to the US or let's go to Brazil today we choose Mexico. So let's go to Mexico and see how people can register their products there. So, but before that, so can you introduce yourself just to explain who you are and maybe a bit more about IPS?
Yes, of course. General overview about myself. I've been in IPS as Director of Business Development and Operations for over 5 years. And what we basically do is help medical device manufacturers and distributors to obtain market access in Mexico. I've also had experience working in nonprofit organizations in the public government, in government agencies, and also in the private sector, and a political party as well in Mexico. So my background is pretty diverse. I have also a bachelor's in international relations. But ever since I transitioned to the medical device industry, I've seen a lot of opportunities there, a lot of opportunities to grow. It is an industry that keeps on giving, and it never stops, and you never stop learning about even the products or the industry itself. So it's a very fast-paced industry, evolving continuously. So that's something that really attracts me and attracts the company itself to keep growing and to keep getting better at what we do, and that's guiding clients in Mexico.
No, I think it's great, and you are right. I mean, for me also, I see that the medical device industry is growing, changing. There is a lot of conversion, and it's something that is really interesting. Also with regulations are changing every day, if I can say, all over the world. So we have also to keep up to date and to help those people to register there. Yeah.
Yes, right now with COVID, we had to relearn learn some new things. How the regulatory authority in Mexico, which is COFEPRIS, is going to regulate the COVID tests, for example, or how it even is regulating antibacterial gel or soap, sanitizer. So these are things that were already in regulation, but we had to, since those are products that we don't often register, we had to go back and see how that was regulated. And so it's been a learning experience even right now with COVID.
Yeah, you are right. So I think, a lot of countries have learned also to be more flexible within their regulation due to COVID, because, I mean, there is an urgency here to have more tests or more PPE or more equipment to save lives. So no need to spend too much time in the administrative things, but a bit of time, but not too much. So I try to find some accelerated way to do that. Exactly. Okay, so let's try to find now how manufacturers or medical device manufacturers can register products in Mexico. But before that, can you tell us more about maybe the market in Mexico? Are you more importing? Are you more exporting? What is some market share, maybe, just to understand a bit of the demand of medical devices in Mexico?
Yeah, I think in both, it's a mix. I would say that it's a mix between importer and exporter. And there are many data that probably your audience does not know that I'd be happy to share. For example, that Mexico is a top consumer of medical devices. Like both consumer and exports has grown constantly since the past 5 years, and it continues to grow. Mexico is a big population, so that's the attractive part, as well as you can compare it in Latin America with Brazil. It's a big population. It has 130 million people. So that is an attractive market for medical device manufacturers or people coming into Mexico to sell. One of the largest producers in Latin America. It is it's in the top 20 of exporting countries in the world. It is number 8, I think. And it is number 14 importer countries in the world. It's also within the top 20. So that is a big, Mexico is in the top 20s, say in medical devices. So that is a very big position for us. It is also the number 1 supplier of medical devices to the US, more or less. To give you an idea of how interrelated we are with the US, it provides more or less 90% of its export to the US market. And it specializes a lot in like dental supplies, even medical equipment. So we end up manufacturing a lot of medical devices that end up going to the US market. We don't consume those, like many of those we don't consume, but we make them and we export them. And it is backed up by multinational companies that are settled in Mexico. For example, Medtronic, BD, Terumo, big manufacturers are located in the northern part of Mexico. They take advantage of free trade agreements, low cost of labor, high and good labor, qualified labor, and that can manufacture. But Mexico is also experiencing development of medical devices.
Okay.
It is not happening quite at the moment as fast, and the government has not backed up many of these companies, with maybe some funds to them to encourage development of medical devices. But there's specifically some areas within Mexico, the country, that are specializing in making these medical devices. So from beginning to end, not only manufacturing certain parts. So that's a big change and a big trend that is happening in Mexico that we can see in the future maybe being something that shifts.
No, I think it's great. And I think these are, if I can say, good numbers or good situations so to attract also manufacturers to sell their products to Mexico. If you are, we talk about Mexico, but there is also maybe other Spanish countries in Latin America that can benefit also by coming to this region. So I suppose there is also a way, if you arrive to Mexico, to be also going to other countries in Latin America.
Yes and no. I think that coming to Latin America or to any other country, you should approach it to what the dynamics are in that country.
Okay.
A lot of manufacturers try to implement the same strategies that they implement in Brazil to Mexico.
Okay.
But regulation speaking, they're different. The market is different. The partners are different. Landscape is different. So I would have a Mexico approach only, to have that as a strategy for manufacturers that are trying to get market access in Mexico, and not try to replicate what you do in maybe Chile, Colombia, or Brazil. I think there are many things happening in Mexico that are very specific to Mexico, that it might take a while to get a hold of them if you're coming from maybe Europe, the US, from other countries. But if you are looking into a strategy that is long-term, I would recommend having that approach, a long-term strategy for sure.
No, I think it's good. It's the same as if you are registering in Europe and in the US. It's not the same countries, not the same regulations. So you are not able, if I can say, if you register to Europe, to go directly to the US. So
right.
If we want now to go more deep dive, if I can say, in terms of registration. So what in Europe, for example, you need CE marking. In the US, you have different pathway like 510K or PMA registration. So what are the different pathways to register your a medical device in Mexico then?
Yeah, I think Mexico is very straightforward with the paths of registration. There are 3 pathways.
Okay.
One is the standard review process. The second one is the equivalency agreements. And the third one is registering through an authorized third-party reviewer.
Okay.
So those are the three pathways. So I'm going to break them down.
Okay, great.
So the standard review process is very straightforward. You assemble your dossier that's compiled with technical and scientific information, administrative and legal information. You finish your dossier and you submit it directly to COFEPRIS, right? And the review times now, since April of 2020, they've they've increased, right? Because COFEPRIS is prioritizing on COVID-19 products, and also they're understaffed. And there's been many challenges right now with COFEPRIS. So I would say that to set the right expectations would be between 10 and 12 months for market approval.
Okay, so really, I mean, for every product or for low risk product, maybe it's lower, and for high risk product, it's longer.
Well, so in Mexico, we have, going a little bit back, we have medical devices are classified in four categories, four classes and 6 categories. And the classes are the low risk and class 1, class 2, and class 3.
Okay.
And categories are 6. And I know in Europe you have IVDs as a separate regulation.
Yeah.
But in Mexico, they're all within the same regulation. So you have medical equipment, prostheses, orthoses, and functional aids, diagnostic agents. So that would be the diagnostic agents compared to IVDs. Supplies for dental use, surgical and healing material, and hygiene products. So those are the 6 categories, right? So going back to your question, would it be less time to register a low risk or a class 1? Yes. In theory, they would have to approve them in 30 business days. That's what the law says. But in practice, it's longer, right? We know that it's longer, but it would be faster than a class 2 or a class 3 device.
Okay, yeah, I think, yeah, as you've said, also with the current situation, also with coronavirus, I think there is a lot of priorities made on other products. So if you arrive even with a class 1 or a low risk product, maybe it will take longer because there is other priorities in place there.
And a low risk product doesn't even require a GMP. It's a very straightforward. It's more like an administrative registration with administrative documents. If you want to register a foreign low-risk product, then you would need in Mexico a letter of authorization from the manufacturer to register. So that would be the most complex document that you would have to request, and the lengthiest to obtain. No? Sometimes it takes a while to legalize and do all that process. Yeah.
Okay. And is it better? I mean, in terms of legalization or everything, or the process of registration. So, is it better to just call the Ministry of Health? How you call it exactly?
COFEPRIS.
COFEPRIS.
The commission, the Federal Commission for Protections Against Sanitary Risks.
Okay. So if
Mexican FDA, COFEPRIS.
So is it easy to just call them and say, I want to register, here are the documents, or you should really be there to go through the process, meet office number 30, and then go to office number 25, and then go to all these things? So is it really this thing, or you can just call them, send them the document per email, and it's fine, it's done?
So that's one of the things that I think shocks our clients, especially the ones in the US, that I think with the FDA, you have a dialogue. No? Yeah. I compare it to a dialogue. And you don't have to wait until the end to get the full review of your application. In Mexico, you have to submit a great application from the first time. You need to make sure that your application is going to be approved the first time. Otherwise, you have to wait all of that review time and then to get approval or to get a request from COFEPRIS. And when you get a request from COFEPRIS, which are also called as prevención, which is a prevention, the time they give you to respond to them varies depending on the route that you submitted or the requirements, but it's usually not that long of a time that you have to respond. So if it's something like a legal document that takes a while to obtain, then you're in trouble, right? You really have to work fast to get those documents. But to answer your question, it's not a dialogue with COFEPRIS, unfortunately. You have no idea what's going on, who's reviewing your application, what's happening. You just hope that at the end you get a good review, and obviously if you submitted a good application, you'll do good. You know?
So having somebody there is really kind of a must. You have to have somebody there that speaks the language and that can go and help you there immediately. So
definitely. And we have strategies to follow up with COFEPRIS. Obviously, we follow the official channels, the channels that are by law, the ones that you should follow. Applications, if there's a delay, then we follow up with them until it gets approved, because that's what we need, approvals.
Exactly. And I know that, for example, in Europe, you need an authorized representative, you need an importer, the same in the US, you need a US agent, etc. So do you need the same thing in Mexico? Do you need specifically to have somebody that represents you?
Yes. So international companies that want to register in Mexico, they need to have a legal representation in Mexico. And if they don't, they can register through a registration holder, authorized representative. Insumos, IPS, is one, can enact as a local representative for international companies. And that also gives us a big responsibility, because we look after the surveillance. Once the product is in market, we are entitled to look after the product. No? So we do that in collaboration with the distributors and with the manufacturer. No? It's not a one-person job. It's a collaboration between all of the companies involved. No? Basically, the manufacturer, the registration holder, and the distributors. Here, the manufacturer can name as many distributors as they want. So that's very good, because they can diversify, and if one partner does not prove right, then they have others that can make up for that, or they can change the registration and eliminate distributors and then put another one that will hopefully prove better in terms of sales and marketing. Go ahead.
It's so it's better then to not take your distributor as your legal representative also.
That is something that the manufacturer should answer, and I mean, we've seen a trend from our own clients that they go in other countries or other continents, Africa, Asia, through distributors. And they have had bad experiences, because the relationship goes sour, and then they are not able to get their registration. The owner is a distributor, so they have to re-register, or it's a loss of time and of money and of resources, right? Yeah. So there are many of manufacturers that do choose to go through a distributor in Mexico, and they have a business settlement there, and whatever, it's right. But we recommend going through an authorized distributors for sure, because that gives them more flexibility into what partners they choose. It diversifies their opportunities. You don't have all the eggs in one basket. You diversify them and have more opportunities there. And also your registration is safe with us. You can say, I want to change this distributor. I want this, that, and we do it on your behalf. Also, distributors in Mexico, they're good. They get the job done. Some are specialized in the public sector. Some are specialized in the private sector. Some both. But we've seen that they lack that regulatory expertise. So if you're going to a distributor, most likely they won't have a regulatory affairs team to get your application in COFEPRIS and approved in a good time. So there would be a struggle there in the regulatory aspect.
Yeah, it's also something that we are recommending here in Europe. So there are also some people that say, oh, can I take my distributor or my importer as my authorized representative? And I always say, I prefer you don't do that, because if you have an issue with them, then you have to, the thing is that you have to place their name on the product. So if you have an issue with them, you have to change all your packaging again to change the name of the products and everything, which is a nightmare sometimes. So it's also something I recommend here in Europe. So I would recommend the same then in Mexico to go.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's highly recommendable for sure. Yeah, it'll be easier for sure. And the other registration routes, we stopped at standard review process, but the other registration routes are the authorized third-party reviewer, which is basically you finish your dossier, and instead of submitting to COFEPRIS, you submit it to an authorized third-party reviewer, which are authorized by COFEPRIS as external companies, private companies, to review and pre-approve applications. So you have, I think, more or less like 19 companies like this.
Okay.
And they focus in pharmaceuticals and medical devices. So you send that application, they usually review it in 15 days, and then you submit it to COFEPRIS pre-approved. So this used to be a great option in 2016 to 2018, more or less. You would get a class 3 approved in 3 months. Even in 2018, we had a class 3. It was a stent approved in 30 days. It was incredible,
Just because they went through this company that is authorized. So is it because there is a good relationship and this is working well, so they are trusting those type of companies more?
Right. So these authorized third-party reviewers, they're audited by COFEPRIS. So they have to follow a certain standard and quality system, that is aligned to COFEPRIS. And they used to have meetings between third-party reviewers and COFEPRIS while your application was in COFEPRIS to take care of any things that needed adjustments or any complementary information before COFEPRIS gave you your approval or not. So that was a good way of collaborating. And technically, COFEPRIS had to train the folks in the third-party reviewers to align criteria, right? And in 2018 in Mexico, we changed governments. So we have now AMLO, and with this, every changing government, there's changes in key administration areas. And so the head of COFEPRIS changed. And with that, many of the how we used to operate in COFEPRIS, many of those criteria, processes changed completely. So from 2018 to now, it took a while to COFEPRIS to get traction. It's still in the changing process. I mean, we're in 2020 and it's still changing. It's still not adjusting. But they are not keen to working with third-party reviewers. So from late 2018 up to today, submitting through third-party reviewers is not advisable because the review times is taking more or less the same time as with the standard review process. So in terms of an investment in time and results, it does not make sense for us to advise our clients to submit under that route because they would be investing more resources because they have to pay for the pre-review with the third-party company. And the time to market is pretty much the same as with the standard review process. So that is something that has made it longer and more complex to have in terms of time to market with our clients. Yeah.
Okay. So I imagine.
We hope it evolves.
I imagine, as you mentioned, that the different political situation can always come and put some troubles, if I can say, in the registration process. But in terms of the registration, then you, as you mentioned, so IPS is able to help medical device manufacturers for that in Mexico. So what does mean IPS again?
Oh, IPS is Insumos para la Salud. Okay. And that literally means health supplies. Health supplies.
Okay.
Health supplies. So in Mexico, you have the regulation for pharmaceuticals and Insumos para la Salud regulation, which basically encompasses all the other health supplies, which is medical devices and all. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And how IPS, how are you helping them? As you've said, maybe you can be the authorized representative, you can help for the registration. So how is it working then?
Oh, before that, Monier, let me just finalize the third registration route.
Okay.
Which is the equivalent agreement, the equivalency agreement. So if your product is approved in the FDA, Health Canada, and Japan, then and if you qualify, depending on the criteria of the equivalency agreement, then the documents that you require to register would be less. Yeah, and the time to market is usually 8 months for registering through the equivalency agreement route.
So FDA, Canada, and Japan. So
yes.
There is no Brazil, there is no Europe, there is no all the other countries, only those ones.
No, yes, exactly. But also if you say, you have 510K in the US, well, yes, but you need a establishment inspection report. So that's one of the conditions. And many manufacturers don't have that, They have the 510K, but they don't, FDA hasn't paid a visit to them. So that's a requisite that they require to register through the equivalency agreement route, or post-market surveillance report for class 2 and class 3. They need to put their adverse events and recall history records. So those are things, that kind of not all products that are approved through FDA, Health Canada, or Japan can qualify under this route, but we obviously take into considerations, look at the information that they give us, and see if we can prepare a strategy to register through that route.
I think it's good. So as you've said, so I think it's important to have an expert in the different routes and to really guide those manufacturers instead of them spending a lot of time to maybe go through the wrong route or to spend a lot of money on that. So and as we said, so IPS can help for that. So what then can you do?
Yes, Monier. So we like to think of ourselves of one-stop shop, 360 regulatory consulting firm.
Okay.
We understand that there are certain aspects that happen before you decide to register, during the registration process, and during the post-market phase. So that's how we break it down. So in terms of our solutions, if we have market intelligence for clients, specifically in foreign clients, that they don't know much about Mexico, or they want to see what price point they enter with their product in Mexico, for example, which are the key players, benchmarking. So we have a service of market intelligence with our ally, Pragmatech, and we can deliver qualitative and quantitative data, market research information for our clients if they want to request that. So that would be one of the services. We also, obviously, our bread and butter, as they would say, is the regulatory strategy and submissions. So we don't specialize on one category or one class. We have experience in all of them, and we can prepare new registrations, administrative modifications, technical modifications, and renewals. So for all classes and categories, we prepare all of that and we submit it to COFEPRIS, follow up until it's approved. That goes hand in hand with hosting and post-market surveillance. So if you appoint us as your authorized representative, we make sure also to do the post-market surveillance space and submit the renewal when it's maintain the registration. COFEPRIS, if they have visits, they visit us, so we represent you before COFEPRIS, etc. And we also have logistic services such as imports, permits, and distributor search and screening. A lot of clients from worldwide, they say, we want to register, but we need a distributor. We don't know who those key players are. Mexico does not have a database of distributors. And we have a distributor search service, so we can pre-screen some of the potential distributors that they might be able to work with the manufacturers. And we, of course, look into compliance with COFEPRIS, basic compliance with COFEPRIS, such as like their operating license. Do they have one? Do they have the scope also to be able to distribute the specific medical device that you want to distribute? Their experience in Mexico, track record. That's very important to us, not only to recommend any distributor, but recommend distributors that comply with the existing regulation. And we also have a service that's focused on advertising. So COFEPRIS also regulates advertising. So whether it's advertising permits or advertising notices, depends on where the product is going, if it's going to health professionals or to the general public. And we also have allies. One of our biggest allies is Bioana, which is based in Monterrey, and they're focused on design and development. So say you want to design a prototype of a medical device and you want to explore elsewhere and maybe lower your costs with high quality work, then we would point you to them to have that concept development engineering team. They're great. We really like them.
Great.
And yeah, so that's pretty much all of the services that we can offer to our clients. But our bread and butter is regulatory affairs.
No, I think it is great. As you mentioned, one-stop shop for all those things. So it's really a great one. So if you are listening and you are really interested to register your products in Mexico, then contact Josué Garza from IPS. He will try to help you on doing that and investigate if you need this support or this service. So Josué, you are, as I've said, you are really working on the Mexican region. So is there any other regions that are really also in scope of IPS?
Yes, well, we have certain partners in Central America, and that partner that we have looks at Central America as a region as a whole. So they have that advantage instead of just Nicaragua, El Salvador, which in terms of market size is not very attractive. But if you look at Central America as a region, that might be better as a strategy. So we have a partner there, and also in Colombia, it's for products that you want to register in INVIMA. We can point you over there. In Brazil, we have a couple of partners as well. But of course, what we try to do is help our clients as much as we can. We really want them to have a successful experience in Mexico and with the partners that we also have in those countries in Latin America. But for us, having a good, successful, and easy experience for registering is very important to us because it's important to us to put ourselves in our clients' shoes. There are many unknowns. They even sometimes haven't had a chance to visit Mexico. Okay. So if you can be their ears and eyes and experienced consultant for them and provide them peace of mind during that whole process, then that's a very big win for us.
Great. So really great. Thank you, Josué, for that. I think it provides really a lot of value for the people that are listening. So if you are really interested to go to Latin America, I think Josué will be your guide. He can find you the right places to go and to help you on all the process. Okay, Josué. So really thank you for that. Thank you for your help. For all the people that are listening to this podcast, so don't hesitate to go to your podcast provider and to provide also a review just to tell that you like this podcast. And don't also hesitate to go if you are looking at that on the YouTube channel to put a like and also to provide a comment. If you have any comment, I will send that to Josué so that he can answer to you. So. Okay, so thank you, Josué. Really appreciate to have you on this episode, and I hope really that people will contact you. Don't hesitate also to go to the show notes. I will put a lot of information so that you can also contact Josué, so that you can reach out to him and ask for his support. Okay, Josué. So thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.
Oh, thank you so much, Bonir. Have a good one.